Hello and welcome to the Vagabond Way podcast. The journey goes ever on with The Long Road. This episode, it was Pete Seeger all along. Today, The Long Road discuss what instrumental avenues have yet to come to pass in their lives. Steve Bonham hankers for a folk instrument from North East England. Kev Moore's fork in the road choice back as a youngster. And Chris the Bish Lydon, that's me, I talk of my three-quarter blues instrument. Plus the usual solo entries from our particular brain pockets this week. The Vagabond Way podcast, featuring The Long Road, is exploring the world of the troubadour, the adventurer, the vagabond. The world isn't beige, it isn't processed, it's authentic, it's rich, and it's real. If those are the sorts of sentiments that make your brain light up, then hop on board. We are embracing all of those things, we're celebrating all of that, and we'd love it if you joined us on the journey. Greetings, I am Chris the Bish Lydon, and somehow we're a third of the way through 2021 already, on to episode 63 of this podcast. What strange times we live in. Thank you for joining us once again. Don't forget to check out our new documentary, Rise of the Artisan, or The Long Road to Now. You can watch it on Facebook or YouTube, or just go to thelongroadband.net/Rise of the Artisan. It follows us during our week of recording last autumn. And the videos for the songs that we were recording during the course of making that documentary for our Down Here at the Crossroads EP. Those videos are coming out in the next few weeks. The first one's already up, Washed Away, and you can find out more about these videos and those songs at thelongroadband.net/crossroads. Also, some exciting news. Our companion book to our last album, American Wilderness Odyssey, is now available on Amazon Kindle. Just search for American Wilderness Odyssey on Amazon and you should see it there. It's a bargain at £3.99 right now, or it's included in the Kindle Unlimited subscription. Or if you want to, you can buy the book directly from us at thelongroadband.net/AWO, AWO, for... Yeah, it starts at just £10, or there's other packages where you get other things as well, so check that out. You can find out more about the stories and the people behind all the songs on our last album, and you get access to a free code for downloading all of the 15 tracks on that album. On to today's podcast #content. I'm going to hand over to me. The Long Road as we are together again in our digital forum for our weekly podcast chat.
Hey.
Steve at home in Derbyshire. Hello, Steve.
Guten Abend.
Guten Abend, yeah.
Do you know why I chose German, Chris?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, because we should, on this day in history, Baron von Richthofen, the Red Baron, was shot down in Germany and killed. And did you know that 63.5% of Americans believe he was shot down by a small dog called Snoopy?
I could believe that statistic quite happily.
Yeah, it was quite on this day over the Somme. There, more Red Baron.
And so that's Steve's little introduction there. Hello, Steve. And then we've got Kev, who's back at home in Spain. Hello, Kev.
Shana Tova.
Say that one more time.
Shana Tova.
Steve, any ideas what that is?
Yiddish.
Oh,
Yiddish.
Yeah. Yes, it's actually it's Israeli for it's Jewish for Happy New Year.
There we are.
Not that it probably isn't, but no harm in wishing people well.
Exactly. Better to be saying hope things are good rather than hope you're having a terrible time. You know, I'm a fan of arbitrary moments in time, and New Year, whenever people celebrate it, can be whenever people like.
Indeed.
So, Happy New Year for this year that just started a second ago. Why not? So today we're gathering to talk some nonsense, as we always do. Perhaps some more serious nonsense some days. Today, perhaps some more silly nonsense. So we thought we'd talk about. Actually, between us, thinking about it. When we turn up to a gig, the number of instruments we bring to a gig is slightly ridiculous. You'd think for the three of a trio turning up on stage, arriving with something like 12 instruments or whatever would be a bit outrageous. But today we're going to talk about what instruments we don't play,
Yeah.
and what instruments we would like to play if we'd ever had the inclination or the time. I mean, Steve, this is a thing that you brought up, so perhaps you're going to start us off today with what's your instrument that you don't play that you want to play?
There are those out there who would say guitar straight away, actually.
And they would be very mean in doing so. And they're not welcome in this podcast.
Do you know, on a serious level, there's a number of things. One is the Northumbrian pipes.
Yes.
I was always sort of hankered. Because they're really interesting. They're an English bagpipe, and they've closed. So let me get this right. The more fingers you put on, the higher the note gets. Yeah, that's right.
They're closed, so the more fingers you put on, the higher the notes get.
Yeah, whereas on most whistles and bagpipes, you take your fingers off for the note to go up. But on the Northumbrian pipes, you put them on, you go up.
Yes, I get that.
Do you?
That's true, yeah.
That would blow my mind, actually.
I'm just trying to process. I can't even begin to process. Let me give that a second. So, transport myself back to being a 5-year-old at primary school playing recorder. So when I was playing when you're playing recorder, you take your fingers off
to
get higher.
Yes.
Yeah.
But on these, you put your fingers down to go higher.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry, I can't. That would not. I don't think I could get on board with that.
No. It is the final frontier of musicianship, I think.
Wow. So what is it that's attracted you to the Northumbrian pipes, apart from that sort of weird fact about how you play them?
They're much smaller and quieter than bagpipes.
It's a good a reason as any, Steve.
Yeah, and the bagpipes I have a more ambivalent relationship with. I do like to hear, the bagpiper up on the hill, on the mountains.
Well, as far away as possible.
The distance being important.
From another mountain. I have flirted gamely with the banjo over the years, but you confiscated it, and I've not seen it for a year. So
well done, Bish. Well done.
That is true. Yeah, your accidental banjo purchase, I borrowed for a friend of mine, and to be fair, it did spark him into getting his own banjo and learning the banjo, and he now plays the banjo. So you have achieved something.
Interesting fact about banjos. I mean, on an interesting fact today, it probably should have become the standard folk instrument for Americans. Not the guitar. It was much more played for a long time. It was only in the 60s that, and if you look at that, the old guys, like, what was his name? I can't remember his name now. Died recently. Anyway, he played banjo. He didn't play the... his name will come to me and I'll add it later.
Yes, we'll ADR that in. That'll be fine. We'll drop it in.
What was his name? Yeah.
We'll have a jingle for him. Is it Tom Paxton?
No, not Tom Paxton, but he did as well.
Yeah.
Tall guy. And people out there are screaming at the radio now. Tall guy. It was actually connected to him on Twitter. Oh. Anyway, I'll go away quietly whilst Kev answers the question. And I'll come back quickly when you're not ready, all right?
Okay.
Yes, fine. So banjo and Northumbrian pipes are Steve's entries into that particular thing. Yeah. Kev, what about you? What don't you play that you think you should?
For me, firstly, I wish I could play the piano better. I can do plonky stuff when I'm writing songs. But the main one, and I briefly, there was a crossroads in my musical life where it nearly happened, and it was when I was working in a town called Drammen near Oslo in Norway, and I got offered a saxophone, and I'd always wanted to play one, and it was a choice between buying this saxophone and a rather beautiful Hagstrom semi-acoustic bass. And I went with the bass. I was already playing bass, obviously, but because we used to do horrific disco stuff in this band in Scandinavia, and I thought I could actually play, some sort of basic one-note sax lines to augment.
Yeah.
Because we were a 6-piece band and we interchanged instruments anyway, so somebody could have gone on to bass, and I was very close to getting it, and I never did, but I love the sound of a really good saxophone, and it's one thing I wish I could put on my own demos quite often. But the good thing is my daughter took it up and learned to play sax, so that was good.
Sax is one of those funny things. Like Steve will tell you, I've got a sort of a long and varied history with saxophones because I think I think to play them well, they are incredibly hard.
Yeah. One of the best things that happened in rock, though, I don't know if you're aware of this, but ZZ Top brought out an album called Deguello. And for this album project, all three of them, because for those who don't know, they're a three-piece rock trio from Texas. And for this album, they each learned baritone sax, soprano sax, and alto sax, and formed their own horn section for their own album. Which I thought was...
wow, no, I didn't know that.
I thought that was
amazing.
Cool. That was impressive.
You know, Kev, it's never too late.
It's never too late.
Never too late.
And I actually don't discount it. What's your instrument, Bish, that you wish you could play?
See, it's interesting. I mean, because I hadn't thought about this at all, really, until Steve suggested it, 20 minutes ago, whatever it is, we started chatting about this. And because I started piano when I was little, and that was always on the cards, because my older siblings always played piano, so that was always going to happen, really. But I had this fabulously... awkward relationship with it because I actually hated having lessons, but I wanted to play it. So it was that sort of, I want to do this, but I don't want to do it your way kind of thing. Yeah. And then, took up cornet when I was little, transferred to tuba when I was a bit bigger. And actually over the years, I've played all kinds of brass instruments. I have performed on stage. I performed at Glastonbury playing trumpet.
Excellent.
Wow.
Yes. Performed at Glastonbury playing trombone, I think.
Yeah.
Performed playing euphonium, tuba. One of my highlights at Glastonbury was performing on stylophone.
There is a wonderful video going around on the internet where somebody using two stylophones has recreated Eddie Van Halen's solo from the track Eruption, and it's unbelievable.
Yes.
It's unbelievable.
I have seen that video. That is incredible. So I get over the years, I've played all kinds of things, but the one sort of instrument I've never played really is, and it's a boring answer really, is guitar. Back at school, somebody showed me how I could play I guess it must have been an E7 chord. Maybe started with an E minor 7 chord.
Just one finger.
Yes, exactly. One finger then down. And they said if you put a second one down, you can get an E7. It's like, well, there we are. We're halfway to rock and roll. Let's keep on going. So two fingers get you an E7, and then he showed me how to get an A7. Mm-hmm. Would it be an A7?
Yeah, two fingers.
An A7. And I thought, well, here I'm three quarters of the way to being able to play the blues here, and that's where I stopped playing guitar.
I would have left you with a B7, so it's probably
exactly.
Convoluted chord on a guitar.
Yeah. That is when he said to me, now the next one, let's not think about a B7 because it's not worth the effort. We stopped there.
I quickly get with a capo on.
Without wanting to labour a pun, it's a bridge too far, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. All these instruments. I love the different sounds. I mean, my starting instrument, and I still, even at this great age, think one day I'm going to return to it. Was the trumpet.
Yeah.
I played the trumpet and I was good at it as a kid.
Somewhere, Steve, you do have a trumpet still. Okay, it's
I
plastic.
do. I have a lovely one. It's a lovely one. My daughter bought me, and I will do it. I will do it.
So basically, our alternative trio is a rather limited guitar, Northumbrian pipes, and a saxophone.
Let's do it.
I think there's legs in that.
Yeah,
I think there's legs in it.
I think we should commit now for the fifth album after the one we're doing at the moment.
Yeah, yes, the 3/4 blues with guitar, saxophone, and Northumbrian pipes.
Pete Seeger, by the way. It was Pete Seeger. It was Pete Seeger, everybody. It was Pete Seeger. Don't turn me off before I've said Pete Seeger. Please, Pete Seeger.
Why don't you have like an announcement?
A big tall guy with a banjo.
At the end, you could have an announcement. The episode that featured the unknown folk banjo player today, the name of the banjo player was Pete Seeger. That's Pete Seeger.
Pete Seeger. I think the name of the episode might have to be Pete Seeger.
Pete Seeger, yeah.
Pete Seeger.
I had quite a reflective evening before I sat down to do my piece for the podcast. I attempted to clear up. It's tidy up. It's always bad news for me. The more I need to tidy, the more distracted and reflective I tend to get. And on this occasion, I picked up my dad's old guitar from behind the settee and thought, I really must do something with this. Now, it's not a good guitar, and it's kind of strange that I've still got it. I've got lots of guitars, beautiful Martins and handmade ones and National Steels, and this is a flimsy old thing, but it was my dad's. Now, you didn't know my dad, but if you did know him at all, you would immediately think, I never knew that Terry Carter ever played the guitar. And you would be right, because I don't think he ever played it in public at all. My dad was supremely and quite beautifully, magnificently indeed, non-musical. My mother rather harshly used to say, this is a man born to sing on the black notes of the piano. Anyway, I think he must have always hankered after being a musician, because we had a piano in the house which he didn't play much either. But here my mum, sometime in my childhood, took up the guitar. I think she was probably trying to teach him. And me as a little boy would lie in my bed at night to hearing them work their way through Tune a Day for a Guitar, number 1. Great classics like Solito Lindo or Skip to My Lou, with my mother singing, my dad kind of muttering and plucking on the strings. Well, he died some time ago, and in clearing out the house I found it without strings, but didn't have the heart to throw it away. It's a nylon strong guitar, which was never much use to me anyway, and I knew it wasn't expensive. But it just became one of those things that you hung on to in order not to make a decision. And so I sat down with it tonight by the fire, and I looked at it, and it just said, look after me. So I got some polish out, and I thought to myself, I'll restring this and I'll see what it sounds like. So I cleaned it up a bit, and then as I looked more carefully, I realised that it was in a very bad state of repair. And one thing leads to another, and I find myself on the internet looking up how to mend cracks in guitars, how to replace the nut on the neck, and what to do about broken machine heads. Which then led on again to a internet surfing competition, finding out where all these pieces might be found, and one thing leads to another. And now I await a cowbone nut, some tight bound or tight bond glue, and some brand new, squeaky new machine heads. And I'll put this together, and dear listener, sometime in the future, maybe I'll even play it to you. And then one thing leads to another. And I looked inside and saw there was a label, B&M España. Now, I wasn't sure what the make was, so again back to the surfing on the internet, back onto the old wobbly board, and I found out there was a musical importer called Barnes and Mullen, who brought in instruments from all over the world and had been doing so since 1891. And in the corner of their website, rather strangely, was a picture of an old steamship called the Empress of Ireland, and a little piece underneath which said that it had been sunk in a disastrous collision in 1914 with a Norwegian coal ship on the St. Lawrence Seaway heading out into the Atlantic. And reading further, that one Albert Mullin of Barnes and Mullin, part of the then famous banjo duo Barnes and Mullin, had lost his life on that. It was disaster to equal that of the Titanic. But somehow history has moved on and forgotten about it. But there it was, in the middle of the 60-year-old, cheap old guitar, waiting to be discovered, if anything proves my oft asserted line that every guitar is full of songs just waiting to be found, and thereby stories to be recovered. This is it. A song awaits. Perhaps I shall write it on this guitar.
So whilst we await the song to be discovered from Steve's soon-to-be resurrected cheap old guitar, here is another that Steve stumbled upon from one of his other guitars. This is called Lady of Gold, and it was recorded somewhere out in the wilderness. And because we have a few minutes still, I'm going to play in one of the Long Road's songs, which has two connections with what we've just heard. One, a rather flimsy connection, and one a little bit less flimsy. So this is a song that Steve found in one of his guitars one day, whilst staying with our friend Rob McHale in North Carolina, USA. And this song just happens to have the word gold in the title as well. So here is Looking for Love, Looking for Gold from Steve Bonham and The Long Road.
The old dog in the stars finds his way to Mars. I'm thinking of you, staring at blue in the gilded fall, copper and bronze, the hint of a song, back once and for all. In, out and through, let's find what's true. Looking for secrets that can be told, looking for love, looking for gold. The only son of the road, I carry my own load, my fate is my own. All the people I've known that curse were named, hope to stumble and slide, tagged along for the ride, just part of the game. In, out and through, hint in the breeze, the whisper of the trees, the shape of the moon that lingers till noon. Wherever I roam, in the eyesight of mind, all the things that I find that are calling me home. In, out and through, let's find what's true. Looking for secrets that can be told. Looking for love, looking for gold. Looking for love, looking for gold.
Hello everyone out there in internet land, and welcome once again to Kev's Cafe Corner, where we've discussed everything from coffee and cake to collectible vinyl. But in recent weeks, if you're a regular listener, you'll know that I've been virtually revisiting my 600-kilometre trek across northern Spain to the ancient city of Santiago de Compostela, and last week you found me resting up in the Atlantic harbour town of Luarca. I awoke on Sunday, October the 18th, and following breakfast in the hotel, I endured a really tough walk out of town up an inordinate amount of steps. It was so gruelling that the last 20 kilometres seemed relatively easy. I stopped for lunch, which I'd bought in the supermarket the day before, a baguette, tomatoes and cheese and ham. And I stopped at a beautiful pilgrim's garden that sat in the shadow of a huge motorway bridge, a giant dark monolith that seemed to scream "modern life is bad" into the ether. The motorway was like a dark snake that relentlessly followed my journey, reminding me of the world outside the Camino. But the pilgrim's garden was an antidote to that. It had been created with love and was a perfect place to rest and recuperate. There was so much colour and beauty in the countryside, farm trailers filled with bright yellow corn, multicoloured washing dancing in the breeze from a farmhouse balcony, and even hay bales wrapped in bright pink plastic gleaming against the baby blue sky. I started seeing pumpkins at this point. No, I wasn't hallucinating. They were everywhere and absolutely huge. The last time I'd seen so many was in Salem, Massachusetts, and they were most likely plastic. These were the real deal. I had another couple of stops along the way, once at a cafe and once at a train stop shelter. It was too small to qualify as a station. I also saw Lily the dog and her owner once again. And I passed a beautiful, quaint old albergue that was all boarded up due to COVID. It was so sad to see them like this. As I approached Navia, I could see it was dwarfed by a large two-span bridge across the river, but the town itself didn't look especially attractive. I made it to the albergue about 17:30, and I was greeted by Aurelio, a genial host with lots of info about the Camino. He patiently and carefully explained the door lock system and how one button on the keypad would call him on his phone, even if he wasn't there to let people in and out. I had a shower, settled in, and booked my bed for tomorrow in Ribadeo, which was 30 kilometres away. I had a lovely chat around the dinner table with him and Rebecca, a nice German girl who'd seemingly been cycling for the whole year from Germany. The albergue in Navia was clean and modern, and I spent a restful night there. Monday, October the 19th, I started the day with coffee and porridge, courtesy of Rebecca, and made my way out of town, eventually realising after about a kilometre that I'd left my staff back at the albergue. Calamity! It may seem crazy, but I had to go back for it. It was a part of me now. There'd only been me and Rebecca there, and she was getting ready to leave on her bike. I hoped I could get there in time. I arrived back at the albergue and there was no sign of her bike. She'd gone. Then I remembered Aurelio's info, the button on the door that rang his phone. I pressed it and a sleepy voice, it was about 7:30 a.m, said, "Yes, Kevin." For a moment I thought, how the hell does he know it's me? Then I saw the camera. He buzzed me in as I explained the situation, and he wished me buen camino, and hopefully he managed to get back to sleep. All being well, today will be my last day in the province of Asturias, providing I complete the 33 kilometres to Ribadeo. I shall miss it. It's a beautiful place. Next time, Aurelio gets his revenge for me waking him up. See you later.
Another step on the road to food perfection this week for the Bishop's Daily Bread. One of those holy grail items for this week's kitchen exploit, the humble cheese scone. Now, there's part of me that thinks this challenge will be one that goes with me for the rest of my days, finding the perfect cheese scone. Perhaps there is no such thing as the perfect cheese scone, but boy oh boy do I enjoy making absolutely sure. A good chunk of what I'm looking for is actually just nostalgia, I've realised. Isn't it always with these baking segments? I think a memory of, a National Trust property cafe as a child, on a day trip or a holiday with family, grandparents. The main point of a National Trust property, as far as I could see, and actually still can see, is the cafe for a nice scone. A proper cheese scone, still warm from the oven. But the really tricky thing is getting it cheesy enough without it being just overpowering and sort of claggy. A trick I have fallen into many times when making my own cheese scones. And then the butter to go on top is so integral. Here, I fear, I would argue, one cannot put too much butter on. That's a trait I take from my dad, who had used many food items over the years as an excuse for more butter than needed. The scone itself, flaky, crumbly even, but not too much, lest it fall apart in your hands. And it needs to be light, not dense and heavy, and it's got to be fresh. I find that even after a day, they become heavier and denser. Now, in the recipe I used this week, I can't remember whose it was actually. Perhaps it wasn't even one of the sort of big names. Maybe it wasn't a Delia or a Mary or a Nigella, or even a Jamie or a Paul. I just remember it was labelled very cheesy scones, which was exactly what I wanted. Now, essentially, I've learned with a scone, to get it light is handle it as little as possible, almost to the point of it looking like visually a disaster. Now, I always use a food processor these days. Mixing the butter into the flour with one's fingers, it just does nothing for me. And I suppose it's cheating using a processor, but I expect Mary, Delia and Nigella, they'd all allow it, so I'm going to forgive myself. Now, the other constituents all vary fairly wildly as far as I can see. Baking powder or plain flour or self-raising flour and baking powder, both. I mean, I don't get it. Water or milk, or as I used this week, a combination of milk and buttermilk. Salt and pepper, not in this recipe, I don't think, but seemingly vital to me. Some a dash of cayenne pepper or a half teaspoon of mustard powder. It's not to my liking, the mustard powder. It's not one of my things. The cheese combo, mostly cheddar in my case, but I also had some Gruyere, however you say it, in the fridge, and some Parmesan, so in they went as well. Now, a younger me, a more foolish me, would have put double what the recipe says for cheese quantity, but I know this now to be foolhardy. I still tend to oversubscribe the cheese, but only by about 25% here. So now, whatever the ingredients, bring it together, but barely. Roll it out, but barely. And in fact, with a sneaky second smaller batch I made later in the week, I didn't even bother with the rolling. I just sort of pressed it down with my hands. And with your circular scone cutter, apparently straight up and down, no twisting is the way to do it. This, combined with the making sure your glaze, your milk, your egg, your whatever on top, is just on top and not on the sides. This makes sure that your scones will rise straight up evenly, apparently. A sprinkle of cheese, of the cheese combo on top, and then 12 to 15 minutes in the oven, and boom, delicious, fresh cheese scones. Actually, really quite easy. But do they hit that nostalgia spot I'm looking for? Do they evoke that National Trust cafe moment? And I think if you get to eat one of these with the right butter within, say an hour of them coming out of the oven at the right time of day, mid-afternoon sun, that would be delicious. You're almost certainly onto a winner. So savour that moment, that perfect cheese scone, because even just the next day, the hit won't be quite as perfect. But that doesn't stop me from searching for it again and again, a little further down the road. But one thing I have learned from all my cheese scone attempts over the years is there is such a thing as too much cheese. So that's it for this week. Thank you for listening wherever in the world you are. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. We're on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, and now YouTube as well. The next episode will be out next Friday. Join us on YouTube for the Transatlantic Connection show and become part of the Transatlantic Connection movement. Head to youtube.com/thelongroadband. If you fancy buying us a coffee, you now can at buymeacoffee.com/thelongroadband. It's dead simple to just drop us a few quid to support what we do. It even accepts Apple Pay and Google Pay. Super easy. All of our music and merch is on Bandcamp, where you can help support a positive ecosystem for the music industry. Downloads, streaming, vinyls, CDs, the companion book, it's all there. thelongroadband.bandcamp.com. We're on Patreon at patreon.com/thevagabondway. Big thank you to our Patreons and a special shout out to Orla Flynn, James Lydon, Stuart Lydon, Yvette Lydon and Trish Taylor. Thank you for your ongoing support. If you'd like to support us, become a Vagabonder. You'll get free digital stuff and merchandise in the post if you want it. Help us create something different, something that entertains and something that inspires others. So join us on the journey and release the vagabond within. Patreon.com/thevagabondway. Thank you once again, brave adventurers, vagabonds and explorers, for joining us on The Vagabond Way. Remember, the world isn't beige. It's authentic, it's rich, and it's real. Embrace every last bit of it. Until next time, the journey goes ever on with The Long Road. Bye for now.